as I'm thinking about what we're talking about, okay, now let's say you got the team together, right? The next part of this is, and you touched on it earlier too, when you talked about reverting to features and functions and speeds and feeds and things like that, right?
Blinking lights.
What's blinky lights? Yes, exactly. Right. How do you define value, right? And how do you make sure that you put a compelling value story together? What you and I call them win themes. There might be other terms, and you only want 2 or 3, no more than 4 of those, right? Because think of it as almost the elevator pitch for your solution, right? If it gets more than 3 or 4, you're going to start sounding like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? Wah, 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 right? So you've got to keep it crisp. And some based on the work that I've done over my past, I've come up with a construct that seems to work really well with clients when you're trying to get at what do they term to be value, right, for them. And in some work in some training and materials I've read in the past, it kind of comes down to 3 dimensions that you can be guaranteed all executives, regardless of industry, regardless of title. Executives wake up every morning worrying about 3 and only 3 things. They're worrying about cost, they're worrying about growth, and they're worrying about risk, right? And it's a combination of those 3. Now, every day is not the same, and every client is not the same, every company is not the same. But you can rest assured, right, that executives are placing bets with company resources, whether that's people, whether that's technology, whether that's money. They're placing bets to try and maximize those 3 dimensions, right? Have I got my cost structure right? Right? That's the first part. What am I doing to attract new customers and retain the ones I've got, grow the business, do more with less? That's the growth side, right? And then risk, I've used this term and usually executives kind of smile and agree with me. It's like on the risk side, it's keep my company out of the newspaper and God forbid, keep me out of jail, right? In this era of increasing regulatory compliance, right? Might sound glib, but that's really what risk is about. And executives are paid to place bets with resources to maximize the profitability of their organization or maximize the results of their organization. So don't get flowery with the language on the win themes of the value. If you come back down to cost, growth, and risk, and there's examples across all 3 of those, make sure when you're engaging your client early that you're talking with them across those dimensions, because depending on time and depending on situation, those 3 may be equal. One of those may be more equal than the others. And I think we all can recognize that depending on what the client cares most about, that will tailor the way we put the solution together for that client. But you want to be able to maximize the value across what they care most about, and then clearly show them that here's how my solution is going to help you do A, B, and C, right? And because anything else, if what you've put into your solution doesn't help with A, B, and C, all you've done is add cost and non-competitiveness to your solution, and nobody wants to do that. What's your thought?
So I agree with that. And looking at each of those three elements, right? So we got cost, growth, and risk. So for those 3, depending on who you're talking to, one of those is going to be much more important than the others. For example, if the decision maker is the chief information security officer, what do you think the number 1 driver for them is? Risk.
Yeah.
Because if they have a breach, that's a career ender for them.
Yes.
Right. Or for their organization, like when Target had a big data breach probably 5-10 years ago, they lost 30% of their market cap overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, breaches are massive. And so having IT security in place really isn't about growth. It's not really about containing cost, to a point, because it's extremely expensive to recover from something like that. Yeah. But really it's about, reducing or eliminating or mitigating the risk. Right. Whereas if you're talking to a CEO, they're probably more worried about growth. If you're talking to a CFO, probably more concerned about cost. Not exclusively, right? But depending on who the decision maker is, one of those elements is going to be more important. And then even each of those elements is going to be tailored to them. What do they mean by growth? Right. Is it market share? Is it revenue? Is it earnings per share? Right? And so, there's a lot of nuance there. And that's really where understanding on the front end, who are your decision makers? Who are your influencers? How is their performance measured? What's really driving this request for this new scope of work? And why it's so important to understand that early on so that you can find the right solutions, identify potential avenues they haven't considered before, and drive down that path. One of the things that concerns me, though, when I'm working with the team in the real world is that they tend to get stuck on technical benefits.
Yeah.
And so things like scalability or quality or innovation. And to me, whenever, when I ask, why is this important to your customer? What's your client trying to get? And I hear an IDI or a shun. So
Quality.
scalability, innovation. If I hear that, that's a red flag to me because that's not enough.
Yeah.
Innovation, what does that mean? I mean, I can define that 3 different ways or 10 different ways.
Right.
How does the client define it, and what's driving the client's request? Because innovation for the sake of innovation doesn't do anything.
Right.
Are they looking for cost-saving innovation? Are they looking for innovation to help them grow? Right? When it comes to scalability, why are they looking for scalability? Is it a cost issue because it takes too much time and money to get a data center set up, so they're looking to go to the cloud? Or are they looking at ways to be able to enter a market and grow quickly? And then that's a growth issue, right? Versus a cost issue. So, you got to go deeper. And then some teams are even worse than that because they'll get stuck on shit like governance.
Yeah.
Well, yes, governance is important, but that's not why the client's coming to you.
Right.
They're trying to reduce risk.
And governance has to be included in the solution or the program, but it's not a compelling reason to buy, right?
That's right.
If it's not there, it's a compelling reason to get you kicked out, but it's not a compelling reason to buy.